green mountain island rose from the surf, as if it had been carved and planted. A ridge of forest so thick, the sky seemed a rumor above it. Word had come before we sailed. Orcs massing along the coast, strange beasts prowling old tracks. An invasion, they said, a dark tide building on the horizon. We were four with a battered purpose. We were not noble-born champions. We were stubborn, battered by other lives, and bound by a single stubborn belief. If nobody stood now, everything would fall later. It felt right then to step into the forest. We fought spiders and won, but the fight was far from over. I sneaked and scouted ahead. Spiderwebs were forming small bridges from a tree trunk to another. From that vantage point we could see it, barely. Farther, beyond the trees, a faint glow. A camp like a hearth light in a swallowing night. We moved toward it carefully. Tents hunched beneath webs, half buried as if the forest had wrapped them to keep them warm. Inside one canvas fold, a backpack lay abandoned. We pried it open with a careful thumb and found the things that make or break a night. 2 healing potions dulled with dust, a grappling hook, a rope, and an old journal crusted with salt and age. I took the journal. Maybe it held answers. Maybe it was only a list of small deaths. We circled the camp and our footsteps froze. At the center, a dark thing yawned. A perfect circular pit rimmed with a lattice of thick, glistening webbing that disappeared into pitch. The hole seemed to breathe. We peered in. Nothing answered, only a quiet pull. I tightened my grip on that crusted journal. The woods were dark. The woods were hungry. And whatever slept below, it had been waiting for someone like us. A sound tore the quiet. Metal on metal, heavy steps. Torin barreled past without a word, the way a man runs when something he believes in needs no permission. He launched himself into the mouth of that pit before any of us could react. There was a sickening thud. Silence sat around us. Snaggle and Yestar just looked at each other, eyes wide, still processing what just happened. I dropped to my knees and whispered into the shadows. Caxrill. The darkness and purple smoke rose up, and out of it rose a spectral rat, smoke-veined and bearing a single, perfect red stripe. Find the Dragonborn, I told him. The rat skittered over the rim and slipped into the black like a thought. I saw through Caxrill's eyes. Stones and webbed curtains and a faint, shaky light below. Then Torin, crumpled on carved steps, wounded. He was alive, breathing shallow and ragged, his armor streaked with dark. We had to get down, and fast. Yestar tied the rope to a grappling hook and secured it into nearby rock mound, while Snaggle and I pulled the rope and started our descent. The rope tightened. The air smelled of mold and old things. When we hit the floor, Torin was pale as bone, but alive. Snaggle fumbled a potion to his lips, and Torin coughed, then focused on the breath of a paladin who refuses to die just for the trick of it. Snaggle's hand shook when he tipped the potion. Torin gulped, one ragged swallow, and the blue bomb knotted itself into flesh and bone. He groaned and tried to stand like a man who'd learned the hard lesson of being broken, but refusing to be useless. We spread into the chamber, a closed circle of stone. Torches popped to life as if the room acknowledged motion. The walls were carved in concentric bands. The floor was smooth with age. No doors opened, only stone. I pulled the journal from my pack and read aloud, voice low and steady. Log of the Crimson Wake. 5 of us left from the cove at dawn. Found it, the mouth of it yawning black as sin itself. The pirates had scribbled notes about a plate in the floor that turned the room like a wheel. Snaggle's foot landed on it. A heavy click, stone grinding like a great clock. Then a door opened, showing a staircase. We went through. The dungeon had awakened. At the top of the stair, we found an altar room. An angel carved from pale stone, sword gripped tight, face hidden beneath the masquerade mask that looked absurd and terrible in the same breath. Yestar reached for that hilt. The statue answered. It spoke a name like a knot. Vorkar Klamar. And the sound snapped into a scream. Stone cracked. Runes breathed black flame into the air. The curse hit Yestar like a slap of winter. Dark veins spread beneath his skin like ink, the color crawling up his arms until his eyes seemed framed by shadow. He staggered, and we all felt it. The clawing, electric panic of something foreign in the chest. Snaggle was quick. A small, sharp prayer and a whisper of healing. The dark faded enough for him to keep walking, but the mark lingered. The mask lay untouched on the floor amid rubble, shining like a coin. Torin took the mask and pocketed it in his pouch, as always keeper of fine things. We turned east and found the emptiness filled with bodies. Shells of men and things that had worn armor once. Must be the Zadok's pirates from the journal. Yestar thought it would be a good idea to loot the corpses and check their pockets for gold. A skeleton lurched up and clamped Yestar's wrist. He nearly fell, then tore free and swung. We fought like people who know the alternative. Torin roared, divine light blooming at his shout as bone cracked beneath his hammer. Snaggle steadied his shortbow and loosed arrows that sang through ribcage gaps. I spun, short sword flashing, and heard the hollow clack as skulls hit stone. At the end, and Yestar and Torin closed the last two with bone-shattering blows. When it ended, the silence was thicker than before, carved from the sound of battle and the knowledge it had cost us breath and blood. Snaggle's boot found a seam, a hairline crack where stone met stone, and the whole dungeon seemed to exhale. The opening he revealed was narrow, older than the rest, like a vein the builders had hidden from the world. Behind it, we found a chest, half-studded in the wall, its lock a three-ringed puzzle of gears and runes. We probed for traps. All clever attempts to keep anything unworthy away had been tried and failed. The key we needed lay in a sarcophagus down the way. A skeleton, probably a noble or a thief, had a triangular toothed key clenched between fingers. The coffin had meant to spring a trap. We cut the wire with a steady hand and let the lid drop safely. I reached into the crypt with the mage hand spell and lifted the key. Back at the magical chest, the lock yielded and orange light spilled out like sunrise. The orange gem lay in velvet, quiet, humming with the sound of a promise or a warning. We took it with that mix of triumph and dread. Treasure is rarely without a price. Yestar took the interesting gold coins. He told us they are worth more than usual. I believed him. A shattered statue sat at the top of the stairs of the next room, ancient arms flung in a permanent curse. Snaggle found a small sundial in the rubble and pocketed it quietly. A stair dropped to a smaller room that pulsed with green light, and crates stacked inside sang faintly, as if each held a trapped storm. Torin went to investigate, and he soon noticed the green glow emanating from the green gems. He wanted one for himself, so he picked one up. The crystals were beautiful and small and full of hunger. They slowly turned into living green oozes that slid like nightmares across the floor. Acid smelled like copper and tears. I rushed towards them and called the Zurak's flame. Arms extended, the air threw itself into fire. Green-orange cone of heat hit the nearest oozes and made them scream into steam. Torin blew lightning through two more, turning the room a blue-white strobe. Yestar swung with brutal efficiency. The Goliath's axe crushed what the axes and fletching couldn't. The oozes reformed if we gave them a breath. Acid hissed at our boots. One shot from my crossbow punched the center of a hulking ooze, and the thing ruptured, a green explosion that bathed my leg in searing pain. When the last slime collapsed, we were soaked in steam and chemical bite. From the wreckage, I found a staff, dark wood veined with green like a heart still beating.
I have stored the staff safely.
The corridor beyond narrowed, the stone darkening as if the dungeon itself were drawing a breath. Every footstep echoed too long, too hollow, like the sound was being swallowed and tasted before being returned. At the far end, we noticed something, a hammer. It rested on a pedestal, worn smooth by centuries of waiting, its surface faintly humming. Not loud enough to hear, but strong enough to feel, like pressure behind the eyes. Torin stepped forward without hesitation. I felt the shift immediately. The way the room seemed to lean toward him, the way the shadows along the walls thickened and stretched, as though something unseen had noticed his intent. The moment his fingers brushed the haft, the darkness peeled itself off the stone. It rose in a violent rush, a shape made of absence, horns cutting the air, claws raking forward with impossible speed. The blow landed before we could shout. Torin staggered back, armor shrieking, blood flashing bright against blue light. We attacked it back. Yestar swung his axe, but could not hit anything in the dark. Our blades passed through it at first, useless, as if striking smoke. Yestar was swinging his axe left and right, but hitting nothing. The shadow was cackling maniacally. Then Snaggle lit the bullseye lantern open. Light shined the creature into being. The shadow demon recoiled, suddenly real, and that was all the opening we needed. My arrow punched through its chest, pinning darkness to stone. Torin surged forward, hammer blazing, and brought divine judgment down in a thunderous arc. The creature unraveled in a howl that rattled my bones long after it was gone. Yestar claimed the hammer, while Torin collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. We dragged him back, patched what we could, and watched as the corridor shifted. Stone grinding, a new path opening as if the dungeon itself acknowledged our victory. The chamber beyond felt different, older, deliberate. 4 towering statues stood in silent judgment: Dwarf, Goliath, Leonin, Tabaxi. Their stone eyes seemed to follow us no matter where we moved. At their feet, an altar waited, 6 empty recesses carved with reverent precision. The riddle above them was cruel in its simplicity. Truth and lies intertwined, certainty punished. We needed to correctly place the items we found in the dungeon so far into their hands. We placed relic after relic, argued softly, reread inscriptions until words lost meaning. And then the dungeon lost patience. Water began to pour from the walls. At first, it was a trickle, then a flood, ice cold and relentless, swirling around our boots, climbing fast. Panic crept in sharp and fast. Torches sputtered. The chamber echoed with rushing water and shouted guesses. For a moment, we panicked. Then Yestar stepped forward. Without ceremony, without explanation, he placed the key and the hammer into the dwarf's stone hands, directly contradicting the riddle's logic. For one terrible heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the water stopped. It drained away as if it had never existed, leaving only soaked stone and our ragged breathing. The statues shifted, grinding loudly, and a hidden door cracked open beyond them. The dungeon had not wanted cleverness. It wanted defiance. We moved on. The stairway descended into a vast cave-like chamber that led to a massive gated entrance into a new room. The air was still, heavy with reverence. At its center stood a stone titan, motionless at first, then slowly turning its head as we entered, eyes glowing with ancient awareness. It did not attack. Instead, it raised a massive hand, and the floor trembled as 4 crypts rose from the stone like coffins lifted by unseen tides. Each opened in turn, revealing honored dead: Dwarf, Goliath, Tabaxi, Leonin, laid to rest with care and purpose. Within each crypt lay an offering: a shield that glowed faintly red gold, a dagger dark as midnight, green magical energy emanating from the blade, a gem warm with inner fire, a warhammer gilded and heavy with promise, its head cold as ice. The Titan placed the items on the pedestal in front of us and carved a message into the stone with deliberate finality: take, leave, do not return. We did not argue. Each of us chose, carefully, reverently, quickly. The items felt right, like pieces long separated finally finding their owners. When we turned away, the Titan stepped aside, allowing us passage upward. We continued forward until we were once again in the circular chamber, this time knowing our way out. We rushed towards the dark hole and the rope that was waiting for us. The rope burned as we climbed. Below us, the dungeon sealed itself, boulders shifting into place as if erasing the path we had taken. No pursuit, no enemies, only the sound of our own breathing and the steady creak of the rope under our combined weight. Then, night. We broke through the mouth of the pit one by one, emerging into the open forest beneath a moonless sky. The canopy above swallowed what little starlight there was, leaving the world painted in shadows and silhouette. The camp waited where we had left it, torn webbing clinging to broken branches, and for a single fragile moment, it felt like we had escaped. The forest was silent, too silent. Then the ground shifted. 2 massive shapes detached themselves from the darkness at the edge of the camp, unmoving at first, their many eyes catching faint light, their bodies outlined only by the unnatural stillness around them. Spider legs tensed, fangs listened. They had been waiting. There was no warning, no time to rest and take a breath. The spiders lunged. And that is where we leave our adventurers. Half exhausted, fully armed, standing in the middle of a dark forest with ancient relics they absolutely do not understand, and 2 very large spiders that very much understand what dinner looks like. Next time, there will be running. There will be fighting. There will be questionable decisions made under extreme pressure. And if they survive the spiders, then the real problems begin. To be continued.